My mom wanted me to let my dropout sister wear my nursing school graduation uniform for fake photos, since she felt left out. I gave her the biggest humiliation of her life. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through nursing school while living at home. Every morning at 4:30, I'd leave for my hospital internship, go straight to classes, then work at a pharmacy until 10 at night. Weekends, I picked up shifts at a nursing home. 4 years of this while my sister Chloe slept until noon and complained the house was too noisy when I made breakfast. Chloe was 2 years younger and had been the baby forever. When she dropped out of community college after 1 semester because it was too stressful, Mom said she just needed time to find herself. When she quit her part-time job at the mall because her manager was mean, Mom said retail wasn't for everyone. When she spent her days shopping with Mom's credit card and making TikToks, Mom called her creative and said she was building her brand. Meanwhile, I was paying rent to live in my childhood bedroom and buying my own food, because Mom said adults contributed to households. The double standard was so obvious, but pointing it out just got me called jealous of my little sister. Graduation was coming up and I was so proud. First person in our family to get a bachelor's degree. I'd maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 60 hours a week. My uniform was specially ordered because I'd earned honors cords, the dean's pin, and a special stole for graduating summa cum laude. The whole thing cost $200 of my own money, but it was worth it. This was my moment after 4 years of sacrifice. 3 days before graduation, Mom came into my room while I was getting ready for work. Said she needed to talk to me about something important. Chloe was feeling really left out because all her friends were graduating from various schools, and she didn't have anything to celebrate. Mom wanted me to let Chloe wear my graduation uniform for some photos so she could post them and not feel excluded. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. Mom said it was just fabric and I was being selfish, not sharing with my sister who was going through a hard time. A hard time of her own making by dropping out. I said absolutely not. Chloe didn't earn this. Mom said I was being cruel and success meant nothing if you couldn't lift others up. She actually said Chloe deserved to feel accomplished too, even if she hadn't technically graduated. I told Mom she could buy Chloe a costume graduation outfit if she wanted fake photos that badly. Mom said that would look cheap and everyone would know it was fake. But using my real uniform for false photos was somehow better? The logic was insane. I locked my uniform in my car trunk. The day before graduation, I came home from my internship to find my car window smashed and my trunk open. My graduation uniform was gone. Chloe was in her room doing a full photo shoot with a ring light and tripod, wearing my honors cords and everything. Mom was taking pictures talking about how proud she was. I lost it completely. Demanded my uniform back immediately. Chloe said she was almost done and I could have it after. Mom said I was ruining Chloe's special moment. Her special moment of pretending to achieve something she didn't. They'd already posted photos online with captions about Chloe graduating with honors from nursing school. People were congratulating her, asking about her plans, saying how smart she was. My actual accomplishment stolen for Instagram likes. I grabbed my uniform while Chloe screamed that I was abusive. Mom said I'd broken Chloe's spirit, and she hoped I was happy. The stole was stained with Chloe's makeup. The honors cords were stretched out. She'd gotten food on the gown. I had to pay $80 for emergency dry cleaning the morning of graduation. At the ceremony, my extended family kept asking why Chloe had posted graduation photos, but wasn't walking. Mom told everyone Chloe had graduated early but was too humble to walk at commencement. My aunt, who knew the truth, called it out immediately. Said Chloe had never even finished a semester, so how could she graduate early? Mom got flustered and said I must have misunderstood. That's when I decided to set things straight permanently. At my graduation party, I gave a speech thanking everyone who supported me. Then I said I wanted to address something. I pulled up Chloe's Instagram on the projector showing her fake graduation photos. Explained to everyone that Chloe had broken into my car, stolen my uniform, and pretended to graduate. That Mom had orchestrated the whole thing because Chloe felt left out of achieving nothing. The room went silent. Kathleen stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. She said she was glad someone finally told the truth because she'd been watching this favoritism for years. The room exploded into noise. Uncle Roy started clapping slowly. Cousin Mackenzie covered her mouth with both hands. Brittany's face went bright red and she grabbed Chloe's arm. Chloe made this horrible wailing sound and ran for the stairs. Her heels clicked loud on each step. Brittany chased after her, yelling my name like I was the one who did something wrong. Half the relatives started talking at once. Some looked shocked. Others nodded like they'd suspected something all along. My hands were shaking, but I kept them at my sides. I wasn't going to apologize. Not for telling the truth about what really happened. Roy walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. He told me I did the right thing. He said lying about achievements helps nobody, and it was brave to call it out. His grip was firm and steady. Mackenzie came up next and hugged me tight. She whispered in my ear that everyone knew Chloe was full of it, but nobody wanted to cause drama until now. Her perfume smelled like vanilla. I hugged her back and felt my throat get tight. At least some people understood. At least I wasn't crazy for being mad about the whole thing. The party noise died down to awkward whispers. People kept glancing at the stairs where Brittany and Chloe had disappeared. 15 minutes crawled by. I stood near the projector with my arms crossed. Some relatives avoided looking at me. Others gave me small nods of support. Then Brittany came back downstairs alone. Her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red. She announced in this fake, calm voice that the party was over. She said I'd ruined what should have been a celebration. Guests started gathering their things. The room cleared out fast. People mumbled goodbyes and headed for the door. But some relatives stopped to talk to me quietly. Aunt Linda squeezed my hand and said congratulations on my actual graduation. Uncle Mark told me he was proud of my hard work. Cousin Gemma whispered that what Chloe did was messed up. Their support made my chest feel less tight. After the last guest left, Brittany turned on me. She screamed about how I'd humiliated Chloe in front of the whole family. Her voice echoed in the empty living room. She called me cruel and jealous. She said I'd damaged Chloe's self-esteem permanently by exposing her lies so publicly. Spit flew from her mouth when she yelled. I just stood there and took it. My jaw hurt from clenching my teeth. She went on and on about what a terrible daughter I was, about how I should be ashamed of myself, about how I'd destroyed Chloe's confidence forever. I finally interrupted her. I pointed out that Chloe damaged her own reputation by stealing my uniform and pretending to graduate from nursing school. My voice came out steady even though my heart was racing. Brittany's face twisted up. She said that was different because Chloe was just trying to feel included. She actually said I should have been the bigger person and let Chloe have her moment. I asked what moment that was exactly. The moment of lying to everyone? The moment of breaking into my car? Brittany didn't answer. She just kept saying I should have handled it privately instead of embarrassing Chloe in front of everyone. Footsteps on the stairs made us both look up. Chloe came down with her eyes all red and puffy. Her mascara ran down her cheeks in black streaks. She pointed at me and called me a vindictive bitch who couldn't stand seeing her happy. Her voice cracked when she talked. I felt anger surge up hot in my chest. I told her she could be happy without stealing my accomplishments and lying to everyone we know. She started crying harder. Brittany rushed over to comfort her. They both glared at me like I was the villain in this situation. Like I was the one who did something wrong. The argument got louder. Brittany kept defending Chloe. Chloe kept crying and calling me names. I realized nothing I said would make them understand. They would always see me as the bad guy. I went upstairs to my room and grabbed my important documents from my desk drawer. Birth certificate, social security card, nursing license, bank statements. I shoved clothes into a duffel bag. Just basics for a few days. My hands moved fast. Brittany appeared in my doorway asking what I was doing. I told her I was leaving. She said I was being dramatic. I pushed past her and went downstairs. Chloe stood in the living room with her arms crossed. I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. Brittany followed me outside yelling about how I was tearing the family apart. I got in my car and locked the doors, started the engine, backed out of the driveway while Brittany stood on the porch. I drove straight to Caleb's apartment across town. He answered the door in sweatpants, looking confused. I asked if I could crash on his couch. He pulled me inside without asking questions. The next morning, I woke up stiff and sore from the couch. My phone screen showed 17 missed calls from Brittany. I scrolled through a dozen texts. All of them said I was tearing the family apart, that I needed to come home and apologize, that Chloe was devastated. I deleted them without responding. Caleb came out of his bedroom and headed to the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the apartment. He poured 2 mugs and brought one over to me. He sat down in the chair across from the couch. He told me I could stay as long as I needed while I figured things out. His voice was calm and steady. I thanked him and wrapped my hands around the warm mug. The coffee tasted bitter but good. My phone rang again. This time it was Kathleen. I answered, and she immediately told me she was proud of me for standing up to the favoritism. She said she should have said something years ago. Her voice was kind and firm at the same time. She offered to let me stay with her and Roy. They had a spare bedroom, and I'd be welcome as long as I needed. I felt tears start to form. I told her I appreciated it, but I needed to find my own place. I needed to stop depending on family and start taking care of myself completely. She understood. She said that was a healthy choice and she'd support me however I needed. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Started looking at apartments online. My savings account showed $4,000. Money I'd scraped together from working 3 jobs for 4 years. I clicked through listings. Studio apartments near the hospital. 1 bedrooms in decent neighborhoods. Most wanted first month, last month, and security deposit. I did the math in my head. $3,000 upfront for a decent place. That left me $1,000 for furniture and food until my first hospital paycheck came in. The freedom of having my own space suddenly felt possible. Not just a dream anymore. I could actually do this. I could actually move out and start my real life away from Brittany and Chloe. Away from the favoritism and the lies and the constant guilt trips. My chest felt lighter just thinking about it. My phone buzzed on the coffee table the next morning. I picked it up and saw Vienna's name on the screen. My stomach jumped a little. I answered, and her voice came through clear and professional. She congratulated me on graduation and said she wanted to confirm my start date for the nursing position. 2 weeks from Monday. I told her that worked perfectly. She ran through some details about orientation and what paperwork I'd need to bring. Her tone was all business, and it hit me that this was real. I had an actual career starting. Not fake Instagram photos. Not lies about accomplishments I didn't earn. A real job at a real hospital where I'd worked my ass off during my internship. After we hung up, I sat there holding my phone and felt something shift in my chest. This was mine. Nobody could take it from me or pretend they'd done the work. I opened my laptop and pulled up apartment listings again. Clicked through saved searches and started making a list. 3 viewings scheduled over the next 3 days. I texted my manager at the pharmacy asking for time off to handle moving logistics. She approved it within an hour. Sean sent me a message saying he'd cover my shifts and added that he'd heard what happened at my party through mutual friends. He didn't ask for details, just said he hoped I was doing okay, and to let him know if I needed anything. I appreciated that he didn't make it weird or pry. The first apartment viewing was the next morning at 10. I drove across town to a quiet neighborhood about 15 minutes from the hospital. The building was older but well-maintained. The landlord met me in the lobby. She was maybe 50 with short gray hair and practical shoes. She led me upstairs to a small 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. The kitchen had updated appliances, white cabinets and black countertops. The bathroom was tiny but clean with new fixtures. The bedroom had good closet space and big windows that let in lots of light. The living room was just big enough for a couch and TV stand. The whole place smelled like fresh paint. I walked through each room twice, checking everything. Good water pressure in the shower. No weird stains or damage anywhere. The building had security cameras in the hallways and a locked entry system. The landlord asked about my employment, and I told her I was starting as a nurse at the hospital. She asked for references and my offer letter. I pulled up the email from Vienna on my phone showing my official job offer and salary. The landlord nodded and said she'd run my information, but it looked good. We went back downstairs to her office, and she checked my credit score and called my references. Kathleen picked up immediately and gave me a glowing recommendation. The landlord hung up and said I was approved. Just like that. I could sign the lease today if I wanted. I signed that afternoon. First month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. $2,700 total. My savings account took a hit, but I didn't care. The landlord handed me 2 sets of keys and a parking pass. She said I could move in whenever I was ready. I walked back to my new apartment alone and unlocked the door. Stood in the empty living room looking around at my space. Mine. I'd earned this through 4 years of working 60-hour weeks and living in my childhood bedroom while paying rent to my own mother. Nobody could make me feel guilty for having it. Nobody could take it away or claim they'd helped me get it. This was what all that sacrifice had been for. The weight that had been sitting on my chest for weeks lifted just a little bit. I was back at Caleb's apartment that evening when someone knocked hard on the door. Caleb looked at me and I shook my head. I wasn't expecting anyone. He got up and checked the peephole. His shoulders tensed. He turned back to me and mouthed Brittany's name. My stomach dropped. He opened the door and she pushed past him into the apartment. She looked at me sitting on the couch and her face was red. She started talking immediately. I needed to apologize to Chloe. I needed to take down any social media posts about the incident. If I didn't do both of those things right now, she was cutting me off completely. Her voice was high and sharp. Caleb stood by the door looking uncomfortable. I set my coffee mug down on the table, kept my voice level, told her I was already cut off. I'd been paying rent and buying my own food for 4 years while Chloe lived for free. Brittany's mouth opened, but nothing came out for a second. She looked genuinely shocked, like this thought had never occurred to her. Like she'd forgotten she'd been charging me to live in my own childhood bedroom while Chloe got everything handed to her. I watched her process this information and saw the moment she realized I didn't actually need her anymore. She switched tactics fast. Her eyes filled with tears and her voice got softer. She said I was breaking up the family, that Chloe was devastated and couldn't stop crying, that I'd humiliated her in front of everyone and destroyed her self-esteem. I stayed calm even though my heart was pounding. Explained that Chloe had broken into my car, that she'd stolen my graduation uniform, that she'd posted fake photos claiming to graduate from nursing school with honors she didn't earn. I was done pretending that was acceptable behavior just to keep the peace. Brittany kept crying and saying I was choosing pride over family. I told her I was choosing honesty over lies. There was a difference. Brittany left without another word. Slammed the door hard enough that the walls shook. I sat there staring at the closed door and my phone started buzzing immediately. Text after text from relatives. Some of them supported me. Said it was about time someone called out the favoritism. Said Chloe needed to face consequences for her actions. Others said I should have handled it privately. That embarrassing Chloe publicly was cruel regardless of what she'd done. That family drama should stay within the family. I read through all of them without responding. Caleb sat back down and asked if I was okay. I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I meant it. Mackenzie texted me separately. Said Brittany was telling everyone I'd attacked Chloe unprovoked at the party. That I'd made up lies about the uniform being stolen because I was jealous of the attention Chloe was getting. That the whole thing was a misunderstanding and I'd blown it out of proportion. I felt my face get hot. Opened my photos and found the pictures I'd taken of my smashed car window. The broken glass all over my back seat. The pried-open trunk. I sent them to Mackenzie along with a screenshot of the police report I'd filed. She responded immediately saying she was showing these to anyone who believed Brittany's version. That she had my back completely. Over the next week, I went back to Brittany's house during her work hours. Packed up my belongings one room at a time. Clothes and books and the few personal items I'd accumulated over 4 years. Everything fit into boxes I'd picked up from the grocery store. Chloe wasn't home either, and I was grateful. I didn't want another confrontation. Didn't want to hear her crying or calling me names or making herself the victim. I just wanted to get my stuff and leave. The house felt different as I packed. Smaller somehow. Less important. I'd spent so much energy trying to make Brittany see the unfairness. Trying to get her to acknowledge that Chloe got away with everything while I worked myself into the ground. None of that mattered anymore. I was leaving and I didn't need her approval or understanding. I loaded the last box into my car and looked back at the house one more time. Then I drove to my new apartment and started unpacking my actual life. Nicole called 2 days before my move-in date to tell me she'd gotten back together with her ex-boyfriend and decided to move in with him instead. She sounded apologetic, but I could hear the excitement in her voice about her relationship working out. I sat on Caleb's couch staring at my phone after she hung up. The apartment was a one-bedroom that we'd planned to split, and now I'd be covering the full rent myself. My savings could handle the security deposit and first month, but after that I'd be living on ramen and whatever free food the hospital cafeteria offered until my paycheck started coming in. Caleb asked if I wanted to keep looking for a roommate, and I shook my head. I'd spent 4 years sharing a house with people who made me miserable. Living alone in a tight budget sounded better than risking another bad roommate situation. I called the landlord and confirmed I'd take the apartment solo. He didn't care as long as the rent got paid. The independence felt worth the financial stress. I could eat cheap meals for a few months if it meant having my own space where nobody could steal my things or demand fake apologies. My first day of nursing orientation started at 7 in the morning. I walked into the hospital conference room and saw 15 other new nurses sitting at tables with name tags and welcome packets. Everyone looked professional and put together. Nobody was wearing a stolen uniform or pretending to have credentials they didn't earn. The orientation coordinator went through hospital policies and introduced department supervisors. I listened to every word and took notes because this was real. I'd actually made it here through years of work and sacrifice. During lunch break, I sat with 2 other new nurses who talked about their clinical rotations and favorite patient populations. They asked about my background and I told them about my internship hours and graduation honors. Nobody asked about my family or why I'd worked 3 jobs or whether my sister was proud of me. They just cared about my qualifications and whether I'd be a good coworker. The relief of being judged on my actual accomplishments instead of family drama made me relax for the first time in weeks. Caleb showed up at my apartment on moving day with his truck and 2 friends from nursing school. We loaded my boxes and furniture in 3 trips. My belongings didn't fill much space since I'd been living in one bedroom at Brittany's house. The apartment looked empty with just my bed, desk, and a few boxes scattered around. Caleb ordered pizza while his friends helped me set up my bed frame. We sat on my living room floor eating pepperoni slices straight from the box. Caleb raised his paper plate in a mock toast and said I seemed lighter already. Like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I looked around my bare apartment with its blank walls and empty kitchen and realized he was right. This space was mine. Nobody could break into it or steal from me or demand I sacrifice my success for someone else's feelings. I felt free for the first time in years. The apartment might be empty and my budget might be tight, but I'd earned every inch of this independence. Kathleen and Roy knocked on my door 3 days after I moved in. Kathleen held a large wrapped box and Roy carried a bag from the grocery store. They'd brought a coffee maker and a bag of fancy coffee beans as a housewarming gift. Kathleen hugged me tight and said she wished she'd spoken up about the favoritism years ago instead of staying silent. She'd watched Brittany treat Chloe and me differently since we were kids and convinced herself it wasn't her place to interfere. Roy set the coffee maker on my kitchen counter and started showing me how to use it. He said family should call out unfairness when they see it, not wait until everything explodes. They stayed for an hour helping me unpack boxes and arrange furniture. Kathleen put shelf liner in my kitchen cabinets while Roy assembled a bookshelf I'd bought at a thrift store. Before they left, Kathleen slipped $200 into my hand and said it was for groceries. I tried to give it back, but she closed my fingers around the bills and told me to let someone help me for once. My first real paycheck from the hospital arrived 2 weeks later. I opened the direct deposit notification on my phone and stared at the amount. It was more money than I'd ever made in a single week, even working 60 hours across 3 jobs. I could actually afford groceries without calculating every dollar. I could pay my rent and utilities and still have money left over. I sat on my couch looking at the number and felt tears start running down my face. 4 years of waking up at 4:30 in the morning. 4 years of studying between shifts and living on vending machine food. 4 years of watching Chloe sleep until noon while I worked myself into the ground. All of it had been worth it. I was making enough money to support myself comfortably doing work I loved. The relief hit me so hard I had to put my phone down and just cry for a few minutes. My phone rang from an unknown number while I was at the grocery store. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Brittany's voice came through immediately demanding to know why I'd blocked her number. She said Chloe was seeing a therapist now because of the trauma I'd caused by exposing her lies at the graduation party. The therapy sessions cost $150 each, and Brittany expected me to contribute to the bills since I was the one who'd damaged Chloe's mental health. I stood in the produce section holding a bag of apples and listening to Brittany explain how much Chloe was suffering, how she couldn't sleep or eat or function normally because I'd humiliated her in front of everyone, how the therapist said Chloe had severe anxiety and depression from the incident. Brittany said the least I could do was help pay for treatment since I'd caused the problem. She wanted $500 immediately to cover the first few sessions. I laughed out loud in the middle of the grocery store. An older woman shopping near me looked over startled. I told Brittany I wasn't paying for anything and hung up. Then I immediately called Kathleen while pushing my cart toward the checkout. She answered on the second ring, and I explained what Brittany had just demanded. Kathleen started laughing too. She told me Brittany was making up the therapy story because Chloe had posted Instagram stories from the mall an hour ago. Kathleen had screenshots showing Chloe trying on clothes and showing off shopping bags while using Brittany's credit card. If Chloe was so traumatized she needed therapy, she was making a remarkable recovery in the juniors department. Kathleen said Brittany was just trying to guilt me into giving them money now that I had a real job. I thanked her for the reality check and finished my shopping feeling lighter. Brittany's manipulation tactics didn't work anymore now that I had people who told me the truth. Work became my refuge over the next few weeks. I focused on learning proper patient care and building relationships with experienced nurses. The hospital felt safe and structured. Everyone had clear roles and responsibilities. Nobody stole credit for other people's work or pretended to have qualifications they didn't earn. Vienna took me under her wing and taught me practical skills they hadn't covered in nursing school. She showed me how to handle difficult family members and manage multiple patients efficiently, how to spot early warning signs of complications and when to call doctors immediately, versus when to monitor situations. She treated me like a capable professional who deserved respect and guidance. The validation of being mentored by someone I admired made me realize how much I'd been missing that kind of support at home. 3 weeks after moving out, Chloe called me directly. My phone showed her name and I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won, and I picked up. She apologized immediately in a soft voice that sounded genuine. Said she knew what she'd done was wrong, stealing my uniform and posting fake graduation photos. She understood why I'd been angry and exposed her lies at the party. She wanted to make things right between us because we were sisters, and family should stick together. I listened without saying much, waiting for the catch. Chloe kept talking about how she'd been doing a lot of thinking and realized she needed to take responsibility for her actions, how she wanted to rebuild our relationship and prove she could be a better sister. She sounded sincere, and part of me wanted to believe her. Then she asked if I could lend her $2,000 because she was trying to start an online boutique and needed inventory money. She'd found a supplier who could get her trendy clothes at wholesale prices, but she needed capital to place her first order. Once the boutique took off, she'd pay me back with interest. She promised this was a real business plan, not like her other failed projects. The apology had just been set up for asking for money. I felt stupid for even considering that she might actually want to repair our relationship. I told her no. She asked again, saying I was making good money now at the hospital, and $2,000 wouldn't even hurt my budget. I repeated no, and hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts about how I was selfish and cruel. I blocked her number and went back to unpacking the last boxes in my apartment. My phone rang again 30 seconds after I blocked Chloe's number. She was calling from a different number, probably borrowing someone's phone to get around the block. I let it go to voicemail and listened to her message while unpacking kitchen supplies. Her voice started sweet again, asking me to reconsider helping her with the boutique because we were family, and family supported each other's dreams. Then her tone shifted hard when she realized I wasn't picking up. She called me a selfish bitch who thought I was better than everyone else just because I had a nursing degree. Said real sisters helped each other instead of abandoning family when they needed money. I deleted the voicemail and blocked that number too. The irony of her talking about real sisters after stealing my graduation uniform wasn't lost on me. I texted Caleb that Chloe had tried the apology routine as a setup for asking for $2,000. He responded with 3 eye-roll emojis and said he wasn't surprised at all given everything I'd told him about her patterns. The next morning, I woke up to 17 notifications on my phone. Brittany had created a group chat called Family Matters, with about 20 relatives included. I scrolled through the messages she'd sent overnight painting me as the villain who had abandoned my struggling sister in her time of need. She wrote paragraphs about how Chloe was trying to turn her life around with the boutique idea, but her cruel older sister refused to help, despite making good money at her new nursing job. How I'd humiliated Chloe at the graduation party, and then moved out without caring about the emotional damage I'd caused. how she'd raised me better than to turn my back on family over petty grudges. Several relatives had responded with supportive messages for Brittany saying how sad it was that I'd become so cold and uncaring. Then Kathleen jumped in with a message that made me smile. She wrote that she'd been at the graduation party and watched me expose Chloe's lies about stealing my uniform and pretending to graduate from nursing school. That Brittany had orchestrated the theft and fake photos because Chloe felt left out of achieving nothing. That I'd worked 3 jobs for 4 years while paying rent to live at home while Chloe slept until noon and spent Brittany's money shopping. Kathleen attached screenshots of Chloe's Instagram showing the fake graduation photos with captions claiming she'd graduated with honors from nursing school. Roy sent a message right after backing up everything Kathleen said and adding that he'd watched the favoritism for years and was glad someone finally called it out publicly. The group chat exploded into arguments between relatives who enabled Chloe and those who were tired of watching Brittany's obvious favoritism. Some defended Brittany, saying she was just trying to help her daughter feel confident. Others pointed out that lying about graduating from nursing school wasn't building confidence. It was fraud. Someone asked why I should give Chloe money for a business when she'd never finished anything she started. Someone else said I was being cruel for not supporting family dreams. The messages kept coming faster and faster, with people taking sides and rehashing old family drama. I read through about 50 messages before muting the entire chat. Getting dragged into defending myself to relatives who would never understand wasn't worth my energy. I had my own life to focus on now, and Brittany's manipulation tactics didn't control me anymore. At work that week, I started eating lunch with 2 other nurses around my age named Jessica and Amanda. They'd both started at the hospital within the past year and knew what it was like adjusting to the intensity of floor nursing. We began getting coffee together after our shifts ended, sitting in the hospital cafeteria and talking about difficult patients or doctors who had unrealistic expectations. Jessica shared stories about her mother, who called her constantly demanding she visit more often despite living 2 hours away. Amanda talked about her brother, who kept asking to borrow money and never paid it back. Hearing their family drama made me realize dysfunctional families were everywhere, not some unique curse I had to fix or feel ashamed about. Jessica said she'd finally started therapy to deal with her mother's guilt trips, and it had helped her set boundaries without feeling terrible. Amanda had stopped loaning her brother money completely after he'd borrowed $3,000 for rent, and then posted photos from a casino trip. Their stories made my situation with Chloe and Brittany feel less isolating. Other people dealt with entitled family members and manipulation too. I wasn't wrong for protecting myself and my money. My second paycheck from the hospital arrived, and I felt proud opening the envelope to see the amount. This was real money I'd earned through actual work, not fake Instagram posts or borrowed accomplishments. I went to the medical supply store near the hospital and bought myself 3 new pairs of scrubs in colors I actually liked. The ones from nursing school were plain blue and worn out from constant washing. These new ones were burgundy and navy with modern cuts that fit better. I wore the burgundy pair to work the next day and felt genuinely happy putting them on. Nobody could claim credit for buying these scrubs or steal them for photos. I'd purchased them with money from my own paycheck at a job I'd earned through 4 years of 60-hour work weeks. When Vienna complimented the new scrubs during morning rounds, I thanked her and said I'd treated myself after getting paid. She smiled and said I deserved to enjoy the results of my hard work. Mackenzie called me 3 days later and asked if I wanted to have dinner at her apartment. She lived about 20 minutes from me in a neighborhood I'd driven through but never explored. Her place was bigger than mine, with 2 bedrooms and updated kitchen appliances. We ordered Thai food and ate on her couch while she told me about her job at a marketing firm. Then she brought up Brittany and said she'd been limiting contact with her too over the past year. I asked what had happened, and Mackenzie explained that the favoritism toward Chloe had extended to Mackenzie's own childhood. When Mackenzie and Chloe were younger, Brittany would buy Chloe expensive toys and clothes while telling Mackenzie's mother that kids didn't need so much stuff. She'd take Chloe on special outings but never invite Mackenzie along. She'd praise everything Chloe did while barely acknowledging Mackenzie's actual accomplishments. Mackenzie said she'd spent years thinking something was wrong with her before realizing Brittany just played favorites and nothing would change that. We bonded over shared experiences of being overlooked while Chloe got constant attention and resources. Mackenzie said watching me finally stand up to Brittany at the graduation party had been satisfying because someone needed to call out the dysfunction publicly. The next week at work, I was assigned to care for an elderly man who'd just received a difficult cancer diagnosis. His family was devastated and asking questions about treatment options and prognosis. I spent extra time explaining things in terms they could understand and making sure they felt supported during appointments with the oncologist. The man's daughter stopped me at the end of my shift and thanked me for the compassionate care I'd provided. She said having a nurse who actually listened and showed genuine concern made an unbearable situation slightly more bearable. Her gratitude reminded me exactly why I'd worked so hard for this career. This was what mattered, helping people during their worst moments and making a real difference. All the sacrifice of working 3 jobs and living at home had been worth it to reach this point where I could actually help patients and their families. That evening, I found a long email from Brittany in my inbox saying she was disappointed in me for choosing pride over family. She wrote about how she'd raised me to be caring and generous, but I'd become selfish and cold. How refusing to help Chloe with her business showed I didn't value family bonds. How exposing Chloe's mistakes publicly instead of handling things privately proved I cared more about being right than about my sister's well-being. The email went on for paragraphs rehashing every point from the group chat and adding new guilt trips about what a good mother she'd been despite my ingratitude. I started drafting a detailed response explaining 4 years of paying rent while Chloe lived free, working 60 hours weekly while Chloe slept until noon, having my car broken into and uniform stolen, paying for emergency dry cleaning because Chloe stained my clothes with makeup. I wrote about the double standards and manipulation and years of being called jealous for pointing out obvious favoritism. Then I read through what I'd written and realized Brittany would never understand. She'd twist everything I said into more evidence of my cruelty and selfishness. I was done trying to make her see reality or acknowledge her role in the dysfunction. I deleted the entire draft without sending it. The next morning, I blocked Brittany's email address and all her phone numbers completely. Every single one I had saved for her went into my blocked contacts list. Kathleen called me that afternoon and I told her what I'd done. She said it was healthy boundary setting, not cruelty, and that I didn't owe anyone access to me just because we shared DNA. She reminded me that Brittany had enabled Chloe's theft and lies, then tried to manipulate me into giving money after everything that had happened. Cutting off contact was protecting myself from further manipulation and abuse. Kathleen said she was proud of me for prioritizing my own well-being over family expectations that I maintain relationships with people who treated me badly. At work the following week, Vienna called me into her office and said she wanted to talk about an opportunity. The hospital was offering a specialty training program in cardiac care that would teach advanced skills for critical heart patients. The program ran for 6 months with intensive coursework and clinical rotations in the cardiac unit. Nurses who completed it were eligible for positions in the cardiac ICU with significant salary increases. Vienna said she wanted to recommend me for the program because I'd shown dedication and strong clinical skills during my first months at the hospital. The application required letters of recommendation from supervisors, and she offered to write one highlighting my work ethic and patient care abilities. I thanked her and said I was absolutely interested in applying. She smiled and said she'd have the letter ready by the end of the week, and that I should reach out to my nursing school professors for additional recommendations. Walking out of her office, I felt proud that my supervisor had noticed my work enough to recommend me for career advancement after just a few months on the job. I spent the next day filling out the application online, attaching my nursing school transcripts and Vienna's letter of recommendation. 2 of my favorite professors from the school agreed to write additional letters, and I submitted everything by the end of the week. The waiting felt endless even though I kept busy with my regular shifts. I checked my email constantly between patient rounds and during lunch breaks. Exactly 13 days after submitting my application, I got the acceptance email. The program director congratulated me and said they were impressed by my academic record and clinical performance. I'd start the cardiac care training in 3 weeks and complete it over 6 months while maintaining my current position. The salary increase would kick in after I finished and passed the certification exam. I called Caleb immediately, and he insisted we celebrate properly that weekend. Saturday night, we went to an Italian place downtown that I'd always wanted to try but couldn't afford before. The menu had prices that would have stressed me out 6 months ago, but now I could order whatever looked good without calculating my bank account. Caleb raised his wine glass when our food arrived and made a toast about me building the life I deserved and leaving toxic people behind. I clinked my glass against his and felt genuinely happy for the first time in months. We spent dinner talking about the training program and what specializing in cardiac care might mean for my future. No family drama, no guilt trips, just 2 friends celebrating an actual achievement. The next morning, I was scrolling through social media during breakfast when I saw Chloe's latest post. She'd written this long caption about fake family members who abandon you when you need them most. How blood should mean something, but some people only care about themselves. How she was learning who her real supporters were and cutting out the negativity. The comments section was full of relatives offering sympathy and support. My aunt from Brittany's side wrote that she was sorry Chloe was going through this, and that family should stick together. A cousin I barely knew said toxic people show their true colors eventually. I felt anger rise in my chest reading their responses, knowing they believed Chloe's version where she was the victim. Then I closed the app and reminded myself that I didn't need their approval or understanding. They could believe whatever made them comfortable. That week, I scheduled my first therapy appointment because I finally admitted to myself that 4 years of favoritism and the recent drama had left marks worth dealing with. The therapist's office was in a quiet building near the hospital, and I felt nervous walking in. I'd never talked to a professional about family stuff before. During the session, I explained the whole situation from paying rent while Chloe lived free to the stolen uniform and fake graduation photos. The therapist listened without judgment and then told me my feelings were completely normal and valid. She said setting boundaries with family members who mistreat you isn't cruel or selfish. It's protecting yourself from ongoing harm. We talked about the guilt I felt for cutting off contact with Brittany, and she helped me understand that guilt was a learned response from years of manipulation. Over the next few weeks, I kept going to therapy and slowly started feeling less conflicted about my choices. November came faster than expected, and I wasn't sure what to do about Thanksgiving. Brittany always hosted at her house, and the thought of going back there made my stomach hurt. Kathleen called me 2 weeks before the holiday and invited me to her place instead. She said Roy was making his famous turkey, and their kids were excited to see me. I accepted immediately, relieved to have somewhere to go that didn't involve drama or fake apologies. Thanksgiving morning, I drove to Kathleen and Roy's house with a store-bought pie and a bottle of wine. Their kids met me at the door asking questions about my nursing job with genuine interest. They wanted to know about the hospital and what kind of patients I treated. Roy gave me a hug and told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything. We sat down to dinner and the conversation was easy and comfortable. Nobody mentioned Chloe or Brittany or suggested I should fix things with them. Mackenzie showed up halfway through dinner with her husband and baby. She hugged me tight and whispered that she was glad I came. We all ate together and talked about normal things like work and kids and holiday plans. Nobody demanded I apologize for telling the truth or suggested I should sacrifice my well-being for Chloe's feelings. It was the most peaceful Thanksgiving I could remember. After dinner, Mackenzie and I did dishes together, and she told me she'd been limiting her own contact with Brittany. She said the favoritism had affected her childhood too, and she was tired of pretending everything was normal. We talked for an hour about our shared experiences of being overlooked while Chloe got everything. It felt good to have someone who really understood. December brought a Christmas card from Brittany in my mailbox. The envelope had her handwriting, and I almost threw it away without opening it. Curiosity won, and I pulled out a generic holiday card with a handwritten note inside. The note said the door was always open if I was ready to apologize to Chloe, and that family should be together during the holidays. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. She actually thought I owed Chloe an apology after everything that happened. I dropped the card in my kitchen trash without responding. I was done playing games where I was always wrong no matter what Chloe did. The guilt I might have felt 6 months ago didn't come. I just felt tired of the manipulation and glad I didn't have to deal with it anymore. Work gave me excellent performance reviews right before Christmas. Vienna called me into her office and went through my evaluation, highlighting my patient care skills and reliability. At the end, she mentioned that a senior nurse position might open up in 6 months, and she wanted me to consider applying. The role came with more responsibility and a significant raise. I thanked her and said I'd definitely be interested when the time came. Walking back to the nurse's station, I felt proud that my career was thriving. I finally had mental energy to focus on my own goals instead of managing family dysfunction. The difference was obvious in every part of my life. January brought unexpected changes when I met someone through friends at work. A few nurses invited me to a birthday party for one of the doctors, and I almost didn't go because I was tired after a long shift. I forced myself to show up and ended up talking to a guy named Derek, who worked in physical therapy at a different hospital. He was easy to talk to and made me laugh. We exchanged numbers and started texting throughout the week. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner because we kept talking. He treated me with respect and listened when I talked about my job. When I eventually told him about the graduation uniform situation, he was shocked. He couldn't understand why anyone would steal someone's uniform or demand apologies from the victim. Dating him felt healthy and normal in a way I hadn't experienced before. No drama, no manipulation, just two people getting to know each other. 3 months after moving out of Brittany's house, I was getting ready for work one morning when I realized I hadn't thought about Brittany or Chloe in days. My life had become full of work I loved, friends who respected me, and the freedom to make my own choices without guilt trips. The apartment I'd worried about affording felt like home now. My career was advancing exactly how I'd hoped. Derek and I were planning a weekend trip together. Therapy was helping me process years of complicated family dynamics. I looked at my nursing degree hanging on the wall and felt genuinely proud of what I'd built. The sacrifice of limiting family contact had been difficult, but absolutely worth the peace and happiness I had now. A week later, my phone buzzed during my lunch break at the hospital. Kathleen had sent me a screenshot of Chloe's Instagram post, showing a huge diamond ring on her finger with the caption announcing her engagement. The post had only been up for 20 minutes and already had comments from Brittany calling Chloe her beautiful bride-to-be and saying she couldn't wait to plan the wedding. I scrolled through more photos that Brittany had posted on her own account. Pictures of Chloe and some guy I'd never seen before, captions gushing about how perfect they were together and how excited she was to gain a son-in-law. My phone buzzed again with a text from Kathleen containing just 3 eye-roll emojis. I actually laughed out loud in the break room. The whole thing was so typical. Chloe had probably known this guy for a few weeks and was already planning a wedding so she could have something to post about and get attention. I texted Kathleen back with a laughing emoji and went back to eating my sandwich. The sting I might have felt a year ago about not being included in family celebrations didn't come. I just felt relieved that I didn't have to deal with the drama of whatever disaster this engagement would turn into. That evening, I sent Chloe a brief text congratulating her on the engagement. I kept it simple and polite. Just a few words acknowledging the news. She didn't respond, and I put my phone away feeling good about taking the high road. I wasn't offering to help plan anything or asking about wedding details. I definitely wasn't going to attend whatever event she threw together. But sending a quick congratulations text meant I'd been civil and couldn't be accused of being cruel or vindictive. The lack of response from Chloe actually made me feel better. It confirmed that maintaining distance was the right choice for both of us. She didn't want me involved in her life any more than I wanted to be involved, and that mutual understanding made everything easier. The cardiac training program at the hospital took up most of my mental energy over the next few weeks. Every shift brought new procedures to learn and complex cases to study. I spent my evenings reading medical journals and practicing skills on training dummies in the hospital's education center. Vienna supervised my progress and pushed me to master techniques that most nurses took years to learn. The work was hard, but I loved every minute of it. I was becoming the kind of nurse I'd always wanted to be, someone who could handle emergency situations and provide expert care to critical patients. The program would open doors for my career that I'd earned through my own dedication and hard work. No one could take this accomplishment away from me or pretend they'd achieved it instead. Every skill I mastered and every positive evaluation I received belonged to me alone. My apartment lease renewal notice arrived in the mail on a Saturday morning. I signed it immediately without even considering other options. The small one-bedroom had become my sanctuary over the past year. I decorated it exactly how I wanted with furniture I'd bought myself and artwork that reflected my taste. The walls were painted a soft blue-gray that made me feel calm after long shifts. My bookshelf held nursing textbooks and novels I actually enjoyed reading. The kitchen had proper cooking equipment that I used to make real meals instead of eating whatever was cheapest. My bedroom had blackout curtains so I could sleep during the day after night shifts. Everything in the apartment was mine and reflected my choices. Living here felt like home in a way Brittany's house never had, even though I'd grown up there. This space was mine because I'd earned it and paid for it, not because someone let me stay there while constantly reminding me I should be grateful. Kathleen called me on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner. She asked how work was going and we talked about the training program for a few minutes. Then she mentioned that she'd heard through family gossip that Chloe's engagement had fallen apart. Apparently the guy had broken things off after 2 months and Chloe had moved back in with Brittany. Kathleen said Brittany was telling everyone that the breakup had devastated Chloe, and she needed family support during this difficult time. I felt a brief flash of sympathy for Chloe dealing with a failed relationship. But then I reminded myself that Chloe's choices and their consequences weren't my responsibility to fix. She'd gotten engaged to someone she barely knew, probably for attention and Instagram content, and it hadn't worked out. That was unfortunate, but it wasn't my problem to solve or my burden to carry. I told Kathleen I hoped Chloe would be okay, but I wasn't planning to reach out. Kathleen understood completely and changed the subject to talk about her own kids and their school activities. 6 months had passed since the graduation party incident, and I barely recognized my own life anymore. Work filled my days with purpose and challenges that pushed me to grow professionally. I had friends from the hospital who invited me to dinners and movie nights. Derek and I had been dating for 3 months and things were going really well. My apartment was decorated and comfortable. My bank account was healthy because I managed my money carefully. I felt genuinely happy in a way I couldn't remember feeling before. The guilt about setting boundaries with Brittany and Chloe had completely faded. I'd spent so many years trying to maintain peace and avoid conflict that I'd forgotten what it felt like to prioritize my own well-being. Now I understood that choosing myself wasn't selfish or cruel. It was necessary for my mental health and happiness. I was proud of the life I'd built and the person I'd become through all the difficult choices and hard work. Vienna called me into her office on a Friday afternoon after my shift ended. She closed the door and told me to sit down, and for a second I worried something was wrong. But then she smiled and said the senior nurse position had officially opened up and she was offering it to me. The role came with more responsibility for training new staff and overseeing complex cases. The raise was significant, almost 20% more than I currently made. I accepted immediately without even pretending to think it over. This was exactly what I'd been working toward, and I wasn't going to play games about considering other options. Vienna shook my hand and said I'd earned the promotion through excellent patient care and dedication. After the meeting, I drove straight to a nice restaurant downtown and treated myself to an expensive dinner. I ordered wine and a steak and dessert, things I would have felt guilty spending money on a year ago. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the life I'd built through determination and hard work. Everything I had came from my own effort and choices, and that made every accomplishment feel even more meaningful. 2 weeks later, I ran into Mrs. Henderson at the grocery store. She'd been friends with Brittany for years and had known me since I was a kid. She stopped me in the produce section and asked how I was doing. Then she mentioned that she'd seen Chloe's graduation photos on social media and wanted to know how her nursing career was going. I felt my stomach tighten but kept my voice calm and explained that Chloe had never actually graduated from nursing school. Those photos were taken using my uniform that she'd stolen from my car. Mrs. Henderson's face went pale and she apologized for bringing it up. She said she'd had no idea and felt terrible for congratulating Brittany on having 2 daughters in nursing. I told her it wasn't her fault and that a lot of people had been misled by the fake photos. She asked a few more questions about what really happened, and I gave her the basic facts without getting emotional. When we finished talking, she hugged me and said she was proud of my real accomplishments. Walking away from that conversation, I felt surprisingly good. Telling the truth calmly and factually was so much better than staying silent and letting lies spread. Over the next few weeks, several relatives reached out through texts and calls. Apparently, Mrs. Henderson had talked to other family friends, and the real story about the graduation uniform had spread through the extended family. Cousins I hadn't heard from in months sent messages apologizing for believing Brittany's version of events. They said they'd thought I was being dramatic or holding grudges, but now they understood what had actually happened. My uncle sent a long email saying he was sorry for not supporting me more publicly at the graduation party. An aunt called to say she'd always suspected something was off about Chloe's photos, but hadn't wanted to cause problems by asking questions. I accepted all their apologies graciously and thanked them for reaching out. But I also made it clear that I wasn't interested in getting pulled back into family drama or attending big gatherings where Brittany and Chloe would be present. I'd built boundaries that protected my peace, and I wasn't going to tear them down just because people finally believed my side of the story. Most of my relatives understood and respected my decision. A few seemed disappointed that I wasn't ready to forgive and forget, but I didn't let their disappointment change my mind. Derek met Kathleen, Roy, and Mackenzie at a family dinner I hosted at my apartment. I'd been nervous about introducing him to the family members I still had relationships with, worried they might overwhelm him or share embarrassing stories. But the evening went perfectly. Kathleen brought her famous lasagna, and Roy made everyone laugh with stories about his work. Mackenzie asked Derek about his physical therapy job, and they discovered they had mutual friends in the medical field. Everyone was warm and welcoming without being pushy or asking inappropriate questions about our relationship. After they left, Derek helped me clean up the kitchen and mentioned how much he'd enjoyed meeting them. He said my chosen family seemed healthier and more functional than many biological families he'd encountered. The comment made me smile because he was absolutely right. The people sitting around my table that night were the ones who'd supported me, believed me, and respected my boundaries. They were my real family in every way that mattered, regardless of how much DNA we shared. 2 months later, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox with elegant script addressing me to Chloe's wedding. I opened it standing by my apartment door and scanned the details without much emotion. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 weeks out at some fancy venue downtown that probably cost more than my entire year of tuition. A small card tucked inside had a handwritten note from Brittany saying she hoped I would reconsider my distance from the family and attend this important milestone. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter and went about making dinner without giving it much thought. The next day, I texted a polite decline saying I had work commitments and couldn't attend. Within an hour, my phone buzzed with an angry paragraph from Brittany calling me petty and saying real family showed up for each other regardless of past disagreements. I read it once, blocked the new number she was texting from, and deleted the message without responding. The wedding came and went while I worked a regular shift at the hospital. Nobody from my side of the family mentioned it afterward, and I didn't ask. Vienna caught me in the staff break room the following week and asked if I had a few minutes to talk. We sat down with coffee, and she explained that the hospital was starting a formal mentorship program for new graduate nurses. They wanted experienced staff to guide incoming hires through their first 6 months on the floor. She thought I would be perfect for it given how quickly I had adapted and how well I worked with the summer interns. The program would involve meeting with a mentee twice a week, reviewing their cases, and being available for questions outside scheduled meetings. I remembered my own first months when everything felt overwhelming and how much Vienna's guidance had meant during that time. Having someone to ask stupid questions without judgment had made all the difference in building my confidence. I told Vienna I would be honored to participate, and she smiled, saying she would send me the program details and match me with a new graduate starting next month. A full year had passed since my graduation ceremony. I sat at my kitchen table one Saturday morning doing the math on my finances and realized I was making more money than I ever imagined possible during those years of working 3 jobs. My salary alone covered rent, utilities, groceries, and still left enough for savings and occasional treats. The apartment I loved was truly mine, with furniture I picked out and decorations that reflected my taste. My phone contacts were full of people who respected me and valued my time. Kathleen and Roy invited me to family dinners where nobody demanded apologies or made me feel guilty for existing. Work friends texted about grabbing drinks after shifts and actually showed up when they said they would. The relationships in my life were reciprocal and healthy in ways I hadn't experienced living under Brittany's roof. Limiting contact with my mother and sister had been one of the hardest decisions I ever made. Some nights I still felt guilty about missing family events, or wondered if I should try harder to repair those relationships. But then I remembered the peace I felt waking up in my own space without drama or manipulation. The sacrifice of distance was absolutely worth the happiness and stability I had built for myself. I walked past my living room wall where my nursing degree hung in a simple black frame. The diploma showed my full name followed by Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and the summa cum laude distinction I earned. Below it was a smaller frame with a photo from graduation day showing me in the uniform I paid for myself, wearing the honors cords and stole that represented 4 years of 60-hour work weeks. Nobody had handed me this achievement or made it easier by covering my expenses. I built this life through determination and sacrifice while living in a home that treated me like a burden. The degree hanging on my wall was real, earned through actual effort and validated by an accredited institution. Chloe could post all the fake photos she wanted, but she would never have what I had because she never put in the work. Brittany could tell whatever stories made her feel better about the favoritism, but the truth was documented and permanent. I felt genuinely proud looking at that diploma because I knew exactly what it cost me and how much I deserved it. This life I created was mine, and nobody could take it away or diminish it with lies.